Good evening, all. We are again on the VERITAS, and today we have a very special issue with a very special guest. You all know that on each and every Saturday, on VERITAS, we try to know the unknown. We are on a path or a mission of a quest. We are quite inquisitive. We want to know how society, the societies around us, its various implications, its various perspectives, and in a various manner. Since, again, we do want to know the truth. Since Vetus in Latin means the truth. Well, today our subject is quite different. It's quite feminism, classics, and English literature. Since we do have a very special guest with us, he's an educationist, he's a professor of English literature in a very prestigious education institution. He is Dr. Anuja Bagchi. He has been a very good old friend of ours. Anuja Bagchi, or if I have to say Dr. Bagchi, has been a part of the Bengal Volunteers and its official mouthpiece Kanji for a very long days. When we were when we initiated the website, Dr. Bagchi had written a very good article on Rojava, the women's revolution in Syria. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to have a sequel of it, but definitely, Rojava still attracts the young minds and still earns a lots of attraction from the people across the globe. Welcome, Dr. Bagchi, to this in this evening. Thank you, Dr. Bagchi. How are you?
Thank you for welcoming me in this prestigious show, and I'm well. Thank you. Let's start our conversation.
Certainly.
See how it turns out.
Well, Dr. Bagchi, first I would like to know, just a minute, that if we consider the English literature version in the part of this discussion, well, what do I want to know is feminism. The word feminism has lots of changes in the last few decades. The feminism on the women's slave movement that was prominent in the 1960s in Europe, it has changed a lot by now. And if you go to the classics of the Indian classics of the Indian epics of the Draupadi and Mahabharata and Sita and Ramayana, we can find these two women central characters as very, very powerful, and they are not only an entity that is subordinated by the males, but they are very, very prominent women features. If I do remember that certainly the discourse between, we do know the discourse between the Rishini, Gargi and Jagyavalka in the ancient Indian Shastras. It does also make us realize that the women had a very, very strong position in ancient India. Now, I would like to know from you, what's the nature of feminism in India at this moment, and how do you perceive it?
You're talking about our ancient literature. So let's begin from that point. Very interestingly, there is a dialogue between Sita and Lord Ram in Ramayana, where when Rama is not that much sure about taking Sita back after the war, Sita says, or Janki, she says that you, just like any other common man, you are considering my womanhood only. You are forgetting that I am the daughter of Janaka. I'm not just a common woman, but you are considering my womanhood. And that coming from Sita, who was a child bride of Rama's, but she's asserting herself. She's saying that her womanhood is not the only consideration, should not be the only consideration. And that shows this streak of individuality, that shows that these women, of course, they are famous for their loyalty to their husbands, but they asserted their self, their individual self. In the Mahabharata, Draupadi is known as Pandita, that is a scholar, who is a scholar. So we are seeing that we have as examples. We have very, very strong women um, whom we have not considered in that way. The society, along with the scholars, they have considered that okay, these are women and they were known more by their male consorts. But that is not the fact. We are seeing that they have this individual self to them, which we still we are yet to discover in them. So if we have to do any feminist study, as far as literature is concerned, we have to start from there. Kalahan's Rajtarangini, we see that Krishna, Lord Krishna, he is anointing Queen Yashobati as the ruler of the Kashmir. So we are seeing that these are the examples which are not that much taken into account by our scholars. So we have to start from there. If we are talking about literature, we have to start from there, from our ancient literature.
Hmm.
If we're talking about
Well,
classics also.
well, take for example, in the last millennium, even in the households of Rajputana, from Rajputana to even Bengal, we have come across many very, very powerful women characters, like that of Bhabo Shankari. We have come across Rani Padmini in Rajputana. We have come across, I think, if I can't name I just forget the name of the mother of Raja Sitaram, who was very, very powerful and proficient in each type of arms and ammunition, even sharp weapons, conducting sharp weapons. So we can find that even in the last millennium, that women were not only the counterparts of the males in Indian tradition, but they were quite an independent character. They could rule.
Of
If we
course.
consider of, if we can take for instances of Bengal in this account, take for example Rani Bhavani of Natu, Rani Rashmani in Calcutta. So in
And
every sphere,
for that matter, Ramakrishna Paramahansa was given Diksha by Bhairavi. So let's not
certainly,
forget about that.
oh certainly,
So
certainly,
all these
and if
women are not taken into account. Whenever we're talking
uh,
about women, we do not take them
uh,
into account. So
no, take for,
these
no,
powerful women,
uh, hmm,
they are
please.
invisible women. Basically, for us who are talking about feminism, these
Hmm.
women have become invisible women. And let's not forget, in the modern India, if we talk about political feminism, what about the Rani Jhansi regiment, which Subhash
Certainly.
Bose created? But these Ranis, where are they in public discourse? Where are they?
Hmm.
The
We must
Ranis who
mention
came
also,
from Burma and Malay.
certainly, we must also mention of Rani Durgavati. Okay. So there are scores of such persons which neither the history nor the public discourses have tried to remember or tried to go on with those traditions. So in this case, Dr. Bagchi, what led to this concept of forgotten? Why have we forgotten those people? Those people? Why? Is it?
Because one aspect of this oblivion, I should say, is the reason that we have come to see feminism in the light of the Western woman resistance, if we can say that.
Mm,
So, what is happening is that we have got this Western prism through which we see feminism. So, what happens is that in the public discourse, we have forgotten all these women, because feminism for us is Western broad concept. Till date,
but it,
it is like that.
but
The first wave, the second wave, the third wave, that kind of feminism is in vogue in a way. So we are not into the study of these women.
mm,
Uh, in the 1940s, Subhash Bose created Rani Jhansi Regiment, and all these women, who, of course, most of them came from the Indian diaspora in Burma and Malay, but still they experienced the rigidity of Indian household. Yet they came out, and it was as much a fight for Indian independence as much for women's independence.
mm,
So we are not seeing that in the light of this, that is also part of feminist discourse, or
May
rather
well.
political feminism. If you talk about that, it is very much political feminism. What happened in INA in the 1940s, but we are not talking about that. But interestingly
Well,
enough,
please go on,
inter-
please.
inter- interestingly enough, the people from abroad, they are taking up these things. We are not talking about these Ranis who created a revolution of sorts. But I have got this book, Women at War, by Hildebrand, who is a German author, and she is documenting the lives of these Ranis. So
Okay.
why we have forgotten these Ranis? That is a very pertinent question. If we are talking about, we are going to talk about feminism, we are talking about political feminism, we must talk about INA, we must talk about the women who fought alongside Subhash Bose to free India. So why
Okay.
we're not talking about this when we're talking about feminism and women's coming out on the streets? We are not talking about these women. So
Well, may
our
I? Well,
discourse,
Dr. Bakshi, just a minute. May I refer to some names also? Uh, Prikrata Wagdatta, Shanti Ghosh, Sumiti Chaudhuri, Kalpana Datta, who had dedicated their entire lives for the cause of the national liberation. They should be the epitomes of women's liberation, don't you think so? They
of
must be the
course,
pivotal point of liberation.
but the way when the society was conservative, the way they came out, they participated along with the men and
Mhm.
contributed substantially to the cause of freedom. We should
Mm.
take into account, of course, and for that matter, I remember that in the autobiography of Ananta Singh, who was one
Mm.
of the warriors of Chattogram Ostaka Lunthan. Um, his sister, elder sister, was very much hurt that she was not included in the plans by Mashtada, and she sort of she was hurt, and she expressed as much. So we see that this kind of what should I say, awareness that we are women and we are no less than the men folk, that was there, because she is saying that am I because I am a woman, you are not taking me alongside you. So this awareness was there. We see that we are women and we have right
To go
to
along with
participate
the males.
in the struggle for freedom. So
Well,
we see.
just wait. I think the name was Indumati Singh, isn't it? Indumati Singh.
Yes,
She
yes,
was
you're right,
Indumati Singh.
you're right.
Dr. Bakshi, in this way, yes, I must also mention a peculiar character. Well, that is Shanti in Anandamat of Bankim Chandra. Okay,
Hmm, hmm,
Shanti
hmm.
in Anandamat, Bankim Chandra's Anandamat, where if we go to the chapter where Shanti is trying desperately to get included in the Sannyas ashram, and Guru Satyananda is trying to resist her. Okay, that conversation, that what can women do and what can men do, I think it's one of the greatest features of women's liberation. That where Shanti is trying to portray that I am as good as a man, my strength
Yes,
is
of
no
course.
less than a man, certainly. But unfortunately, these types of great works and classics have not been given the due consideration. Well, take for example, just a year back, I was talking to some two or three left women activists who are also in the women's liberation. When I was asking them this, they replied in a single one. Have you gone through the book of Simon Beaufort that is called Second Sex? Okay, this book of Simon Beaufort happens to be the Bible to this women's liberation at this moment. But unfortunately, I don't know that how many women's liberation activists have gone through that book even. Since Simon de Beauvoir's entire production, entire thought procedure was basically in the West. On the Western civilization, it's reservations, its reformations, and everything. But it has no relation to India. What I am trying to ask to you that if in India we do have such a glorious tradition of women's liberation movement, how has it been uh, how has it been brushed aside and and supplanted by this Western thought procedure? How?
Um, One of the reasons can be that we came to depend on the Western education. Western education is not bad. I'm not saying that, but the fact is that our the infrastructure, the whole infrastructure of our education is based on Western thoughts. Again, I'm not saying anything against Western thoughts, but we have been conditioned in that way that all our it's a kind of north south division, right? Whatever we're getting from the north or the first world, we are taking it up or lapping it up rather, and we are seeing our civilization, we have begun to see our civilization through that prism of Western thought. So what is happening is that we have been able to brush aside all these women and their history because we are focusing on the thought process which is coming from the West. That is why mm, all these examples are in front of our eyes, but we are negating, I should say, negating all these examples somehow in the educational discourse.
Well, since
That
you
is
were
one
the
of the
professor,
reasons.
what are the other reasons? What are the other reasons?
Other reasons are somehow um, uh, another important reason may be that um, our socio-political reform, which has happened through the law, through the social reformers, through the political reformers as well. So the area of our oppression, I'm not saying there is no oppression on women, but the area of oppression is quite small. If we are not talking about implementation of the reforms, but socio-political and legal side of it has helped women. In the Western countries, women had to come out on the streets to get their voting rights, but our constitution has given it from the word go that yes, you have got this right to vote. If we see the various reforms that happen to Hindu Bibaho law, we will see that there are rights given to women in those reforms. Um, if we see our IPC, Indian Penal Code, we are seeing that yes, women are given a secure place as far as the code is concerned. So what is happening is that the reforms have been vast. That is why mm, we have not bothered. In a way, we have not bothered to see that there have been contribution from so many women so that it came to the point that we got so many rights. If
Okay.
there
So,
is vast oppression, then I think we see that okay, what is happening here, where is the women's voice, but our state has given us the right from the time it became free through various reforms, and before that various social reformers came. That was also one of the reasons that our discourse has negated all these women and their contribution.
good. Well, but still there are child women marriages. But still there is nikah halala in India. These are also operations of the women. But do you
I
think?
think
Do you think?
I think we need a uniform civil code. Otherwise, customs, these customs are very mm, hard to removed from the public domain unless and until we have uniform civil code. This is
Do
not
you
going to go away.
do you think that the UCC is going to be the solution of every woes and anguishes? Do you think
Mm,
so?
could you please elaborate your question? I didn't
Well,
get you.
my question is: do you think that Uniform Civil Code, if it's enacted across India, is going
Mhm.
to solve the problems of the women? Take for example the child marriages that are going
At least it
in
would
the
be a big
villages.
step. At least it would be a big step towards reform, and if not, all the anguishes will be get rid of. That's not the point. Point is that we should start somewhere, uh,
Oh,
and then see what happens. Uniform
then
civil code should be there,
well
because if in the criminal law, if we have achieved to certain extent, we have achieved some parity, why not in the civil law?
certainly,
Say,
certainly.
why not in
Well,
the civil law? Then
that
criminal
means
law
you
is
have
not.
that means you have
Hmm.
do have the confidence that if UCC is enacted, that it is going to bring forth some constitutional provisions or safeguards to the women, some constitutional safeguards.
Of course.
Fine. Well, Dr. Bagchi, in this case, do you think that since you have been in this profession of the noble profession of imputing knowledge and erudition, do you think that what you are seeing at the moment around you in this society, do you find any social degeneration at this moment? Do you think so?
In which way?
And
Social
literally,
degeneration in which way?
Miss, the human relations, I'm not talking of the politics. I'm talking of the non-politics, political perspectives. Well, in
Mhm.
the personal relations, the relations that were very sacred or sacrosanct even a few years or
It's
decades back are no more. Do you think so?
um, actually, I try to be positive. Of course,
Mhm.
Aristotle also used to say that that our age is seeing such degeneration. Aristotle, in his
Mhm.
times, he noted that that was the age of degeneration. So I think one thing is that generation to generation, this feeling comes that the generation before was better, and this generation is not that much good, and degeneration is there. So that is one of the way of seeing it. But yes, to certain extent, we are seeing degeneration. Maybe it's the way of seeing on part of our generation. But yes, there is erosion of values, or rather, I should say that middle class values, which certainly um, I also have noted. Yes, degeneration is there, but again,
Mhm.
who can say that mm, I'm right or wrong? I'm noticing it, but maybe it's the ills of our generation, the way we were raised
Mhm.
up, and now we are seeing that absence of that. But there are good points as well in this generation. They're more focused. They're more, mm, if not more well behaved, but they are. I have seen they're much more go getters, or
Mhm.
focused on their career and all that. So this generation is not doing bad, but they could have been better.
So, to quote Charles Dickens, it was the best of times of Bengal, it was the worst of times of Bengal. Do you get me?
Um,
To quote
Please repeat.
To quote Charles Dickens, there's a tale of
Mhm.
two cities, as it had stated
Yes.
that it was the best of times of France, it was the worst of times of France. It was age of incredibility. It was age of despair. So can
Yes.
we use this quotation for Bengal now? Can we use this quotation for Bengal now?
You're talking about talking in respect of Bengal.
Yes, certainly. Since we
Okay.
both of to hail from this state, so I do want to know that do you think this quotation is quite apt and meaningful for West Bengal today?
Yes, definitely. Yes, definitely.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you, thank you. Well,
definitely. Yes.
now, Dr. Bagchi, I would like to bring forth your article on Rosa. It was a very, very important article. It was one of the most outstanding articles that has been produced by us and also been
Hmm.
I've read in my life.
Hmm.
So, if I do ask you, since I have not been able to talk to you in this on this before, well, what did make you, or what impressed you to contribute such a great article? What did you find in Rosafa? What have you found?
Yes, basically, what drew my attention to this whole Rojava experiment, I should say it's a very important socio-political and legal experiment
Experimentation. Yeah.
as far as Middle East is concerned.
Hmm.
Um, because one thing is that I have always been interested in the Kurdish people, but notwithstanding that. Um, the fact is that there is this gentleman who is called Abdullah Öcalan, who is we can say, the spiritual father of this whole Rojava experiment, or the political feminism as we see it. Abdullah Öcalan has said in his genealogy, or that is known as Science of Woman. In this writing, he says that in the Middle East history of 5,000 years, he is saying, according to him, 5,000 years of Middle East history, the history has been the history of women's enslavement and the history of dominant male. From this, he is deriving his conclusion that women and women's freedom is important for the male also to be free, because ultimately women's enslavement leads to men's enslavement too in the in the society. So actually, Rojava is I said it's an experiment. It's very important experiment. It's very important for it to succeed, because uh, on this theoretical framework, Rojava stands. The Rojava Constitution stands on this theoretical framework of Abdullah Öcalan, who, if you search the net, you will find him to be. He has been given epithet like militant, but of course. That's another story. Why is he called a militant? But his book genealogy is very important, and how it inspired the Kurdish woman to take up arms against oppression. And it's also important to note that the Kurds have always been different from the other races of Middle East. So it was to happen that this Rojava experiment came from them. The Kurds society or social setup was kind of guerrilla setup and tribal setup, where there was no structure to have enslavement of both men and women. They are more, what should I say, more free in that sense. That is why the way Rojava happened, way the north and eastern Syria came to be autonomous region, it
Hmm.
drew my attention, and I thought of writing. Whenever we write, we are bound to research more into it. So, in order to research more, I happened to write about Rojava.
Well, fantastic, very nice. Well, Dr. Baksha, I'd like to know from you that you have just said that women's enslavement leads to men's enslavement of men, even, right? Just a few months back, you said it. Can you just elucidate or explain how does it happen?
Because whenever you are enslaving half of the population, and that enslavement is entrenched deep into the psyche of the society, so what happens, the
Mhm.
other sorts of enslavement follow, where men also cannot get free from that kind of enslavement, because whenever you are enslaving women, you are actually admitting that enslavement is or can be um, mm, justified. And whenever you are justifying one sort of
Mm.
enslavement, other sort of enslavement follows.
Okay. Well, does the women's enslavement, especially in the Kurdish social structure, gives does it present a barrier to the entire social progress? Do you think so? Any barrier or any prevention?
Prevention as to.
The social progress. Just now you said that just a few moments before you said that the Kurdish social structure is quite like a guerrilla setup. Okay, so I'm
Yes,
yes. Okay, my question is that so even in the guerrilla setup, the institution of marriage does exist, or doesn't it exist? Does it exist?
of
Marriages.
course exists. Of
Yes.
course
If
exists.
okay, so if the institution of marriage exists, then there is a concept of family also. So even
Of
if
course.
there is the, of course, if there is a concept of family, so how is the guerrilla setup of the intersocial scenario related to the very family? What's
No,
this guerrilla
actually,
setup?
what Okalan is saying is that
Hmm. Hmm.
uh, uh, he is comparing the Kurdish society with the other Middle East societies, and he is
Okay.
saying that uh, the concept of enslavement did not seep into this Kurdish race because their setup was different.
Mm.
They were leading a tribal life, they were leading a semi guerrilla type of life. So what happens is that both the men and women were freer than the other races.
Okay.
That is
Well,
why Kurdish women are more emancipated. What he wants to say is that Kurdish women's enslavement was not that much deeply rooted as the other races women's
fine, fine, fine.
enslavement were. He's saying that. Mm. And of
Well,
course we see the example of the fact that yes, Kurdish women are freer than the say, for example, Arab women. In the book by Agatha Christie, Come Tell Me How You Live, where as archaeologist's wife, Agatha Christie used to live in those regions, and she is saying, attesting to the fact that Kurdish women were proud. They used to talk, they used to walk tall, and they used to be very vocal about their rights and all. They are freer than Arab women. Their body language, from their body language to their social way of behaving, was much different from the Arab women. So she is attesting to this fact. So Kurdish women is a very important factor in the Rojava experiment because they are more freer.
it was free. So, well, Dr. Bakshi, if I'm not wrong, I must want to say that the Kurdish women do also belong to the faith of Islam, isn't it? They are also Muslims.
Yes, of course. There are
Well,
Muslims,
if
there are Yajdis.
okay, if the Kurdish are the Muslims, how can a sect or a special social group of such an uh, tightened, organized religion can talk, walk in a different manner? Since we do know that across the globe, as Islamic Ummah is concerned, the um, the pressures of the Islamic Ummah on the women has been enormous. So, in this special area of Middle East, how can the Kurdish society think, speak, and act so differently? What do you think? What makes them so different?
That is what Ukalan also tries to explain, that their social setup has been different from the other races there. And so, religion, of course, religion oppression is there. That is why the need for experiment was there. But it's a kind of comparative thing, that they are freer than the other races. It's not like
Mm.
they are fully free. They are not fully
Mhm.
free, but they could take up arms and they could fight against oppression because they were freer comparatively.
Well, is it so that their ancient heritage is quite different to that of the Middle East? We have heard that Kurdish does also belong to this Indian origin, like the Yazidis. We have heard only. We have not found such profound,
There
proven
is a
facts.
theory about
There is a theory, yeah.
Yajdis have long relations with Indian civilization, and some say that they are of Indian origin and all that.
Mm.
Um, Maybe these ancient beliefs somehow played a part in their warrior goddess avatar.
Okay. Yes, that's certainly that's a great point from you. That's a great point from you. So in that case, we may speak that since the ancient heritage is quite alive within them, the organized religious clasp, the clasp, CLS, the clasp has not been so tightened on them like the other parts of the globe, but Islamic Ummah is very prominent.
And of course, that is one of the reasons. And uh, the fact is that after all the persecution, religious and social persecution, for centuries they have been at the receiving end of persecution. They could keep their ancient beliefs alive. That shows that they have got this strength, inherent strength in them. That, of course, the fact is that mm, they are very much rooted in the tradition, and that is why even after persecution and even after being less in numbers, very very less in numbers than the other races, they are surviving and they are keeping alive their tradition and their ancestral beliefs.
So, and I think that in this fact, we must have to admit that at this point, the Kurdish and the Hindus in Bangladesh are in the same level. Since in the last 75 years, after undergoing lots of genocides and assaults and bloody happenings, the Hindus in Bangladesh are still able to go on with their ancient traditions. So now okay
The
now I
history
swear
of
yeah.
subcontinent that has developed in a very different way, because
Mm,
what happened to Indian subcontinent uh, was never seen before. Uh,
mm,
Even for the Yazdi persecution and everything you take into consideration, whatever happened and still happening in Indian subcontinent, and we must not keep Pakistan out of it. Of course, whatever is happening right now in Pakistan, for the minuscule Hindu minorities there, whatever is happening with them. So this is a very peculiarly subcontinental um, thing that is happening. The subcontinental, what should I say, mm, phenomenon, what we are seeing in Indian
mm,
subcontinent. We must not compare it with whatever is happening in Middle East. It's something which is peculiar to our subcontinent. Whatever is happening to the minorities in both sides of India.
mm. Fine. So now, Dr. Bakshi, I would like to come to your forte, and that's the English literature. So, since I am also a student of English literature in my graduation and post graduation, I do know a little that there have been a huge number of women authors in English literature. Everyone, I think, I don't want to name only a few. There are lots, umpteen number of people are there. So my question is, does the women's liberation movement of the Westernized has any peculiar relation to English literature?
Peculiar relation meaning what?
Though I'm not sorry, as a peculiar, very special political relation, have this. Now, my question is, I must put the question straight. The Westerners, women's liberation movement 1960s, whether they were influenced by the women writers of the English literature, do you think so?
You were saying that feminists there were they
Mm.
influenced by the female writers?
Yeah,
Mm,
definitely.
you are meaning that. Um,
Mm.
uh, if we take into account the prominent names, some of the prominent names um, of English literature, and the very prominent protagonists of those um, books or novels, um, we can get a subtext also. I mean, um, if we go through Jane Austen, if we go through Charlotte Bronte, if we go through Daphne du Maurier, uh, as far as it's a very personal opinion of me, um, that women protagonists, the protagonists who are very well known, like Jane Eyre, like Elizabeth Bennet, like the nameless, so-called nameless heroine of Rebecca. Mm, we see that in spite of them being free or claiming to be free, mm, actually they are enslaved. For example, in Jane Eyre, Jane is saying that I am no bard and no net ensnares me. So she is declaring her freedom, sense of freedom,
Mhm.
or sense of emancipation in this dialogue. But what is happening is that she is falling for Mr. Rochester. Very good. Uh, but what happens to Mr. Rochester's first wife, the mad woman in the attic? Who is she? What is her history? That is not being dealt with. And Jane is getting Rochester after the death of the mad woman in the attic. That is her.
Mhm.
That is his first wife. So, who is this first wife? Why is she mad? What is her madness? And why is she closeted within? Why is she not free? All these questions are left unanswered. And uh, Jane's personal happiness, that's another thing. But the spirit of woman, which is symbolized through this mad woman, she is made to die. And after that, Jane's happiness comes. So it's a way of, I think, drowning women's voice uh, by saying that you are mad and a mad woman must die for the male protagonist to be happy, the way I see it in Jane Eyre. If we take Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, Elizabeth Bennet, she is a very free spirited woman, as you know. But still, Um, what happens is that uh, she gets married to Mr. Darcy, and that somehow leads to her happiness and her social standing. This marriage was vital for her. So, where is her way of seeking emancipation? A thoroughly free spirited woman, but ultimately, what happens is that she gets married to a very patriarchal Mr. Darcy. In Daphne du Maurier, we are seeing that the protagonist um, is a very young, shy, nervous kind of woman or child woman, and she falls for Maxim. And Maxim had a wife who was beautiful, smart, self asserting kind of a woman. She also had to die. Rebecca had to die. And Maxim, in her place, chooses a person who is opposite to Rebecca. So I don't think the classics by women writers
Hmm.
uh, could be any um, inspiration for the feminism that rose later, because
Wrong.
all these famous protagonists of English literature, who are known to be very free spirited, but uh, we can see a very anti-feminist angle to all these characters or protagonists, in my
That means
opinion.
that means they had been under the uh, uh, extraordinary influence of conservatism. They were conservatives in the outlooks.
Conservatives, and as I said, that a woman who is too smart for her own good, she has to die, as we see in Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca.
Mhm.
Rebecca,
So hasn't
yes.
Dr. Bakshi, hasn't there been any character in the ancient English literature, just being written by the women authors, who stands as an inspiration to women in the later ages? Hasn't there been? Isn't there any single character in the entire gamut of English literature till now who stands as a role of as a pivotal point of inspiration to women in the later ages? Isn't there any character?
Yes, there are women who um, were free, and a woman in the literature, I mean, were free
Mhm.
and who could be the inspiration for the free woman, or the aiming for free women, like in Thomas Hardy's Return of the Native, Eustacia Vi,
Mhm.
who was free. Of course, she was shown in a very negative light by Hardy. Hardy was not very much happy with her, if we read the
Mhm.
novel. But she is an example of a free woman, I think. Though she has not been read as such like that. But yes, characters like Eustacia Vi, we can say that could be inspiration for the feminists, authors, or writers, or activists. In this regard, I would also like to point out our own Kapal Kundala. Kapal Kundala also was a free woman in all respect.
Mhm.
Even after she was married to Nabukumar, if we read Kapal Kundala, we see that she remained free in spite of being married, in spite of being part of married household. She remained free, and in her heart, she was the child of the Kapali, and she
Certainly.
maintained that.
And the same narrative, well, and the same narrative can be found in the case of Prafulla Devi Chaudhurani, isn't it?
Of course, Devi Chaudhurani
She,
is a very popular
she,
character.
no, no, she outshines her male consort Brojeshwar completely. Brojeshwar is a non-entity in the Indian novel, isn't it? Brojeshwar is a
Of
non-entity.
course, she can
Well, at
be
the same time,
also inspiration. Of course, you are very much right. But she is more popular of the two. And
yeah.
Kapal Kundala, we do not see as such as an example of woman emancipation.
Well,
But
I must say you just a minute.
she was saying at one point of time, I remember, when her sister-in-law was saying that, aren't you happy? Um, Not in exact in so many words, but in a way it was like that. The dialogue was like that. That aren't you happy? Or how would you be happy? Then Kapal Kundala is saying that perhaps if I could, like old days, could walk through the sea beach, I would be happy. So Kapal Kundala, even in spite of being married, her heart was free and heart craved for that pre-marriage life. So Kapal Kundala can be an example of that. And of course, Devi
Well,
Chaudhurani,
so
definitely,
well,
yes.
okay. We just now I come to some live references, especially Bengal circuit. Only a few days back, I was just going through a few writings of Swarna Devi Chaudhurani. Swarna Devi Chaudhurani happened to be one of the most celebrated leaders of the Bengal revolutionary movement or national liberation movement. She was a person who initiated Pratamaditta Utsav and Vinashtami in Bengal to be followed, and that was later adopted by Pulin Bihari Das, the founder of Bhagavad Samiti. When I was just going through her letters and even of her mother, Swarna Kumari Devi Patto Shankar, with a bunch of letters, I can find a strange sense of women's liberation and the inherent grudge, the inherent intent that I am no less than a man can be found in these writings. So now, Dr. Bagchi, I would like to know from you that I'm not talking of the women authors, not talking of the male authors. Take, for example, William Shakespeare. Uh, I'm not talking of the inspiration even. Do you think Lady Macbeth potentially was more promising than even Macbeth? Do you think so?
Lady Macbeth was just a very selfish and ambitious woman. Being selfish and ambitious doesn't mean that they can be example of woman emancipation.
Certainly, I
Uh,
also said that.
Men and women, they both can be selfish. They both can be manipulative. They both can be ambitious. Of course, she outshadows Macbeth in cruelty and all that, but afterwards she breaks down and all. But the fact is that I don't think Lady Macbeth can be example
No,
of
I'm
woman
not. Well,
emancipation.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that she's also a very powerful women character that can be found
She's
in
a
any
very powerful
literature.
woman character, very powerful woman character. There is
And
no
one
doubt to it.
and what's of Desdemona in Othello? Desdemona in Othello. Don't you think it's quite a powerful
Desdemona,
character?
is Desdemona a powerful character? In
At
which
least
way?
in the last stage she tried to justify one points with Othello just before the murder and everything. That she tried to justify herself. I think that language and those the words are quite impressive. I'm asking
Okay,
you as
I'm
well. Just
glad
a minute.
to know that you find it so. Uh,
Just a minute. I am asking you as a student.
that's a way
I'm
of
ask,
seeing things.
I'm asking to the professor as a student. I'm asking her. Okay, I'm asking you.
No, no, no. Then I have to go through the Desdemona character once again to see, to find out whether this can be also a new angle to think about Desdemona. I should certainly do so and let you know.
So, Dr. Bagchi, what we have found from this entire conversation that women's liberation movement, though how powerful in the West in the 1960s and might be now even, I don't know what's the present situation of the liberation movement of the women in Europe and America, but as far as the ancient heritage of India and the Sanatana civilization is concerned, women have always been portrayed as a very, very powerful. Well, if I must mention Kautilya. Kautilya has said that women is 8 times more powerful than men. Men can overpower women only in physical strength, but in passion, in thinking, in vision, and everything, in ways, women are more powerful than women. So we shall have to conclude that the culture of women, the portrayal of women as a complete independent character, as a counterpart to women and even more powerful than men has always been cultured, cultivated in the Indian tradition. Don't you think so? Even more than the West. Do you think so?
Yes, of course, of course. The way Lord Krishna advocated for the crowning of Queen Yashovati, that tells a lot about the heritage, our heritage of, there have always been this heritage of powerful women. And if you go through Ramayana, you would see that Sita was not just a submissive, loyal wife to Rama. She had her own individuality. And what to tell about Draupadi? She was mm,
If,
full of strength for the Pandavas. So
and
of
a
course
paragon of
we have,
defiance.
and
I'm saying,
yes, of course,
yeah, I'm saying that Draupadi was also a paragon of defiance. He was an epitome
of
of
course,
defiance.
of
The,
course, in her dialogue, in
the
her conversation with Yudhishthira, in the period of Vanavasa, we see that she can argue so well, and she is revolting against whatever has happened to her, befell her in the Kaurav Sabha. So, of course, we have all these examples of strong and powerful women in our civilization, our ancient civilization.
So, do you think so? One day it can have, it may happen that the central characters of the Indian civilization try to impress, start to impress the West, not the West, but it's the reverse from now that the Indian women characters have started to impress the West, and that can bring a new perspective to the women's liberation
And that,
movement.
that yes,
Can this
yes, yes,
happen?
that is happening already. That is happening. If we if
How?
we watch if we watch Peter Brook's Mahabharata, we would see that the way Draupadi has been portrayed in that Mahabharata, we'd see, yes, the West is being impressed by the strength of Indian women. So that day is not far when the West is going to discover the heritage, Indian heritage, where women held powerful positions. Of course, this is happening. As I said in the beginning of the conversation, the West is discovering the woman at war.
Mm,
They are rediscovering while we have forgotten about them. So, of
yeah,
course,
totally
yes, that is
correct.
happening. That
So
is
we have
happening, that
also
will happen.
So we have almost come to the end to this great discourse of Dr. Bagchi. But before we leave, we must say that in the Indian tradition, it's said Trishu Lokeshu Nasti Makti Samaguru. In the entire creation, the Srishti, there is no greater than the mother. And it must also be stated that when a brahmachari wants to be sannyasi, it's instructed that he must have the permission of his mother. He is not asked to have the permission of any other entity under the sun, but except his mother. So the relation between the mother and the offspring, the umbilical cord, remains the most sacrosanct concept in the ancient Aryan Hindu civilization, and that proves
Of course.
that women not only has a central character. He can be Lakshmi, he can be she can be Lakshmi, she can be Chamun, and everything. And the women happen to be the central character of a good family life. She can be the greatest warrior. She can be the epitome of inspirations, the pivotal point of influences for the coming ages and the coming centuries. This happens to be the greatness of the Indian civilization, and we have also talked about the Western civilization. It's good to find that Dr. Bagchi stated that I didn't know that Peter Brook's Mahabharata is trying to rediscover Draupadi in a new fashion, but which we have forgotten, that the West is trying to rediscover Indian tradition in a better manner. So, Dr. Bagchi, it's a great pleasure to talk to you today.
Same,
Uh,
same, same here, same here. It was
okay,
nice
so
talking to you.
it's a great discourse. It has been a great discourse, and we hope to bring you once more in this session. Any day we shall make contact to you. We shall talk to you, and to a different session or different subject. We will have more talks with you in this way. Okay, sir. Okay, ma'am.
Yes. Thank
Thank you. Thank you very much for the show. Thank you. Good night.